Hello and welcome to Being Prodigy. Now put on your headphones and start learning. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description.
Colonial rulers regarded the contemporary culture of India as inferior. On the other hand, Indian novelists wrote to develop a modern literature of the country that could produce a sense of national belonging and cultural equality with their colonial masters. Translations of novels into different regional languages helped to spread the popularity of the novel and stimulated the growth of the novel in new areas. The novel and South Indian novels began appearing in South Indian languages during the period of colonial rule. Quite a few early novels came out of attempts to translate English novels into Indian languages. For example, O. Chandu Menon, a sub-judge from Malabar, tried to translate an English novel called Henrietta Temple written by Benjamin Disraeli into Malayalam, but he quickly realized that his readers in Kerala were not familiar with the way in which the characters in English novels lived. Their clothes, ways of speaking, and manners were unknown to them. They would find a direct translation of an English novel dreadfully boring. So, he gave up this idea and wrote instead a story in Malayalam in the manner of English novel books. This delightful novel called Anjulekha, published in 1889, was the first modern novel in Malayalam. The case of Andhra Pradesh was strikingly similar. Kandukuri via Resalingam, 1848 to 1919, began translating Oliver Goldsmith's Vicar of Wakefield into Telugu. He abandoned this plan for similar reasons and instead wrote an original Telugu novel called Rajasekara Karitamu in 1878. The novel in Hindi in the north, Bharatendu Harish Chandra, the pioneer of modern Hindi literature, encouraged many members of his circle of poets and writers to recreate and translate novels from other languages. Many novels were actually translated and adapted from English and Bengali under his influence, but the first proper modern novel was written by Srinivas Das of Delhi. Srinivas Das's novel, published in 1882, was titled Pariksha Guru, the Master Examiner. It cautioned young men of well-to-do families against the dangerous influences of bad company and consequent loose morals. Pariksha Guru reflects the inner and outer world of the newly emerging middle classes. The characters in the novel are caught in the difficulty of adapting to colonized society and at the same time preserving their own cultural identity. The world of colonial modernity seems to be both frightening and irresistible to the characters. The novel tries to teach the reader the right way to live and expects all sensible men to be worldly wise and practical, to remain rooted in the values of their own tradition and culture, and to live with dignity and honor. In the novel we see the characters attempting to bridge two different worlds through their actions. They take to new agricultural technology, modernize trading practices, change the use of Indian languages, making them capable of transmitting both Western sciences and Indian wisdom. The young are urged to cultivate the healthy habit of reading the newspapers, but the novel emphasizes that all this must be achieved without sacrificing the traditional values of the middle-class household. With all its good intentions, Pariksha Guru could not win many readers, as it was perhaps too moralizing in its style. The writings of Devakinandan Khatri created a novel reading public in Hindi. His bestseller, Chandrakanta, a romance with dazzling elements of fantasy, is believed to have contributed immensely in popularizing the Hindi language and the Nagari script among the educated classes of those times. Although it was apparently written purely for the pleasure of reading, this novel also gives some interesting insights into the fears and desires of its reading public. It was with the writing of Premchand that the Hindi novel achieved excellence. He began writing in Urdu and then shifted to Hindi, remaining an immensely influential writer in both languages.
This is Being Prodigy. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description. And please subscribe to show your support.
He drew on the traditional art of Kasagoi, storytelling. Many critics think that it is novel Suhasiddin, The Abode of Service, published in 1916, lifted the Hindi novel from the realm of fantasy, moralizing and simple entertainment to a serious reflection on the lives of ordinary people and social issues. Suhasiddin deals mainly with the poor condition of women in society. Issues like child marriage and dowry are woven into the story of the novel. It also tells us about the ways in which the Indian upper classes used whatever little opportunities they got from colonial authorities to govern themselves. Novels in Bengal in the 19th century, the early Bengali novels lived in two worlds. Many of these novels were located in the past, their characters, events and love stories based on historical events. Another group of novels depicted the inner world of domestic life in contemporary settings. Domestic novels frequently dealt with the social problems and romantic relationships between men and women. The old merchant elite of Calcutta patronized public forms of entertainment such as cabaret, poetry contests, musical soirees and dance performances. In contrast, the new Bhadralok found himself at home in the more private world of reading novels. Novels were read individually. They could also be read in select groups. Sometimes the household of the great Bangla novelist Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay would host a jatra in the courtyard where members of the family would be gathered. In Bankim's room, however, a group of literary friends would collect to read, discuss and judge literary works. Bankim read out Nandini, 1865, his first novel, to such a gathering of people who were stunned to realize that the Bengali novel had achieved excellence so quickly. Besides the ingenious twists and turns of the plot and the suspense, the novel was also relished for its language. The prose style became a new object of enjoyment. Initially, the Bengali novel used a colloquial style associated with urban life. It also used Meali, the language associated with women's speech. This style was quickly replaced by Bankim's prose, which was Sanskritized but also contained a more vernacular style. The novel rapidly acquired popularity in Bengal. By the 20th century, the power of telling stories in simple language made Sarath Chandra Chattopadhyay, 1876–1938, the most popular novelist in Bengal and probably in the rest of India. Novels in the colonial world. If we follow the history of the novel in different parts of India, we can see many regional peculiarities. But there were also recurring patterns and common concerns. What inspired the authors to write novels? Who read the novels? How did the culture of reading develop? How did the novels grapple with the problems of societal change within a colonial society? What kind of a world did novels open up for the readers? Let us explore some of these questions by focusing primarily on the writings of three authors from different regions: Chandu Menon, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay and Premchand. Uses of the novel. Colonial administrators found vernacular novels a valuable source of information on native life and customs. Such information was useful for them in governing Indian society, with its large variety of communities and castes. As outsiders, the British knew little about life inside Indian households. The new novels in Indian languages often had descriptions of domestic life. They showed how people dressed, their forms of religious worship, their beliefs and practices, and so on. Some of these books were translated into English, often by British administrators or Christian missionaries.
This is Being Prodigy. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description, and please subscribe to show your support.
Indians use the novel as a powerful medium to criticize what they consider defects in their society and to suggest remedies. Writers like Virasalingam use the novel mainly to propagate their ideas about society among a wider readership. Novels also helped in establishing a relationship with the past. Many of them told thrilling stories of adventures and intrigues set in the past. Through glorified accounts of the past, these novels helped in creating a sense of national pride among their readers. At the same time, people from all walks of life could read novels so long as they shared a common language. This helped in creating a sense of collective belonging on the basis of one's language. You would have noticed that people living in different regions speak the same language in different ways. Sometimes they use different words for the same thing. Sometimes the same word is pronounced differently. With the coming of novels, such variations entered the world of print for the first time. The way characters spoke in a novel began to indicate their region, class or caste. Thus novels made their readers familiar with the ways in which people in other parts of their land spoke their language. The problem of being modern. Although they were about imaginary stories, novels often spoke to their readers about the real world, but novels did not always show things exactly as they were in reality. Sometimes, they presented a vision of how things ought to be. Social novelists often created heroes and heroines with ideal qualities, who their readers could admire and imitate. How were these ideal qualities defined? In many novels written during the colonial period, the ideal person successfully deals with one of the central dilemmas faced by colonial subjects: how to be modern without rejecting tradition, how to accept ideas coming from the West without losing one's identity. Chandu Menon portrayed Angelika as a woman of breathtaking beauty, high intellectual abilities, artistic talent, and with an education in English and Sanskrit. Madhavan, the hero of the novel, was also presented in ideal colors. He was a member of the newly English-educated class of Nayars from the University of Madras. He was also a first-rate Sanskrit scholar. He dressed in Western clothes, but, at the same time, he kept a long tuft of hair, according to the Nayar custom. The heroes and heroines in most of the novels were people who lived in the modern world, thus they were different from the ideal or mythological characters of the earlier poetic literature of India. Under colonial rule, many of the English-educated class found new Western ways of living and thinking attractive, but they also feared that a wholesale adoption of Western values would destroy their traditional ways of living. Characters like Anjulika and Madhavan showed readers how Indian and foreign lifestyles could be brought together in an ideal combination. Pleasures of reading as elsewhere in the world. In India too, the novel became a popular medium of entertainment among the middle class. The circulation of printed books allowed people to amuse themselves in new ways. Picture books, translations from other languages, popular songs sometimes composed on contemporary events, stories in newspapers and magazines, all these offered new forms of entertainment. Within this new culture of print, novels soon became immensely popular. In Tamil, for example, there was a flood of popular novels in the early decades of the 20th century. Detective and mystery novels often had to be printed again and again to meet the demand of readers. Some of them were reprinted as many as 22 times. The novel also assisted in the spread of silent reading. We are so used to reading in silence that it is difficult for us to think that this practice was not very common in the past. As late as the 19th century and perhaps even in the early 20th century, written texts were often read aloud for several people to hear. Sometimes novels were also read in this way, but in general novels encouraged reading alone and in silence. Individuals sitting at home or traveling in trains enjoyed them. Even in a crowded room, the novel offered a special world of imagination into which the reader could slip and be all alone. In this, reading a novel was like daydreaming. Women in the novel. Many people got worried about the effects of the novel on readers who were taken away from their real surroundings into an imaginary world where anything could happen. Some of them wrote in newspapers and magazines, advising people to stay away from the immoral influence of novels.
This is Being Prodigy. To get special study material, just contact us through the link in the description. And please subscribe to show your support. Thank you and happy learning.